Hi. In honor of America's 250th anniversary of its independence, I wanted to read something that Nick Clooney wrote about the people who signed the Declaration of Independence. He wrote it in 1993. It's very interesting. I just finished rereading the Declaration of Independence. I try to do that once a year, usually right around the 4th of July. This year, I concentrated on the men who signed the document. It's very hard now to imagine what they were like, though they were at the height of their powers just 3 full lifetimes ago. I pulled out a list of their names and ages and occupations and hometowns. There were 56 in all, if my list is correct. One was a manufacturer, just one. He was an ironmaster. Not much manufacturing back then. Here's another difference between 1776 and 1993. 13 of the signers were farmers. That's almost a quarter of the total. Whatever else these men were, they were considerably closer to the land than we are. Only 9 were businessmen. That runs counter to the current conventional wisdom that business is the repository of all the common sense in the Republic, and that no one could possibly govern who hasn't met a payroll. But there it is. Someone forgot to tell the Founding Fathers. 4 were physicians. 1 was a surveyor. 4 listed their occupation as politician or public servant. I wonder how many of today's politicians would list their occupation as politician. The word has obviously degenerated over the years. 1 was a clergyman. He was also a college president, so our eventual commitment to the separation of church and state was not compromised early on. 23 of the signers were lawyers. That's almost twice as many as any other occupation and should provide at least a partial antidote to the current tidal wave of lawyer bashing. All 56 of these men, including the lawyers, deserve our gratitude and our careful study. They were on the cutting edge of a political system that has swept the world. They had courage. There was no guarantee that they wouldn't spend the rest of their lives in jail, or worse yet, be hanged from the nearest tree. The average age of those present was 44. What do you suppose was going through the minds of the 2 youngest men in this august group? Thomas Lynch and Edward Rutledge, both 26 and both from South Carolina. How must they have felt as they looked across the stifling room and perhaps caught the eye of the oldest man there, 71-year-old Benjamin Franklin, already the greatest man in the colonies. As he put his pen to that historic paper, his fellow Pennsylvanian, John Morton, a 52-year-old surveyor, had just 1 year to live. That got me to thinking. I found that 6 of those who signed the Declaration did not live to see how it turned out. Morton was the first. Next was Philip Livingston, a New York merchant who died in 1778 at the age of 62. 1779 was a tough year for the fortunes of the fledgling republic and for the signers of the Declaration. Lawyer George Ross of Pennsylvania died at 49. Merchant Joseph Hughes of North Carolina died at the same age. Farmer John Hart of New Jersey was 62 when he died. And remember the youngest signer, Thomas Lynch of South Carolina? He didn't get much older. He died in 1779 at the age of 30. Their last view of the United Colonies was not a hopeful one. George Washington and his ragtag army were about to spend a worse winter than they had had the year before at Valley Forge. Major defeats loomed in the South. Treachery of Benedict Arnold was still a year away. What was to become the world's greatest democracy was still decidedly a work in progress when these men breathed their last. The incredible victory at Yorktown was 2 years away. The peace treaty that validated our independence, which they had so bravely declared, was 4 years in the future. But I like to think that they never doubted for a moment. I hope they believed all would come right at the end. I suppose that's the reason I haul out the old Declaration of Independence once a year. It seems to me there's a compact between those long ago men and every American who has followed them. In spite of their personal flaws and individual prejudices, these 56 men set in motion a force which would eventually widen the boundaries of human freedom beyond anything seen on the surface of the earth. In the case of self-evident truths and unalienable rights, all Americans, men and women, black and white, believer and atheist, rich and poor, young and old, all of us are, it seems to me, required once again to mutually pledge our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Have a great 4th.